Alrighty everyone, welcome back. I hope you're all having an amazing Tuesday. We have The Mandalorian Season 3 finale arriving tomorrow on Disney+, which is going to run around 38 minutes long in length. Not a terribly, long or short episode, but right dead smack in the middle. Now, given that Jon and Dave are gearing up to marketing the Ahsoka Tano series, they're also getting ready to announce a lot of Star Wars shows at this year's D23 event. That's really going to be probably bigger than Celebration because they really want to expand the second phase of the roadmap. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future Star Wars updates. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01. I thank you all so very much for the great and kind support. Now, given that on April 28th, we are getting Return of the Jedi re-releasing into theaters, there are ticket sales now available on Fandango. I'm sure a lot of fans are going to enjoy that. But when it comes down to the original trilogy, which by far, in my opinion, is the best trilogy of the Skywalker saga, that's just my personal opinion, apart from the prequels and the sequels, the prequels to me are the second, sequels are at the bottom of the list. Now, when we look at everything related to that, one thing that Lucasfilm is gearing up to do that may come across as very controversial is a full-fledged plan to refilm many aspects of course, the original trilogy movies, specifically A New Hope and Return of the Jedi, and exactly how Lucasfilm is going to go about doing this is very interesting because George Lucas gave the okay on this. Now, given that there's a lot of shows in the works, alright, we have endless amounts of shows being worked on. Jon and Dave are still, to this day, working on over a dozen of them. Simultaneously, mind you, at the same exact time. That's a lot of work to go through. But, given that Jon and Dave are dedicated to this, it's no problem to them. However, with many new Star Wars projects in the works at Lucasfilm, creators Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni are creating endless stories for the audience. One of which is described to be a massive project that will include Tony Gilroy as the main writer, with Jon and Dave serving as co-writers. Now, this is described to be a project where Lucasfilm will be refilming many parts of the original trilogy that will be modernized in a Project Bluepoint, which is described to be a starfighter-focused series, full of space battles and land battles, during A New Hope and Return of the Jedi. Now, further, it's noted that George Lucas gave the okay on this project, where Jon, Dave, and Tony are planning to completely remake the battles of Endor and Yavin, that will reintroduce characters like Luke and other pilots for the remaking of the Battle of Yavin, as well as Return of Lando in, of course, the retelling of the Battle of Endor. Now, given that there's a lot of things happening with this, a lot of fans are going to most likely find this to be very risky. The plan by Lucasfilm is to provide fans a full, modern take on the destruction of both Death Stars. Tony Gilroy decided to sign on since he loved retelling the story about how the Death Star in Rogue One came to its birth. Now, it's noted that this remake of many scenes for both A New Hope and Return of the Jedi is set to also give fans a new take on the Luke versus Vader lightsaber duel in a special way by Tony Gilroy that will provide fans what was hidden with the film, then when it cuts away to the space battles in the original film to extend the fight between Luke and Vader. So let me just stop right here for 1 second. Now, given that we have a lot of things happening between, George, Jon, and Dave, and how they themselves are really trying to really kind of just expand all these different stories, I'm not quite sure how a lot of fans are going to react to this, to be honest. I, however, have no problem with this if it's executed very well, if it's well edited, and if it comes across as very Rogue One-ish as planned. I think it's going to be a hit. I think that Project Bluepoint has the opportunity to really be a genre of its own. They want to make this a starfighter-focused series where we're going to be following the missions of the Rebellion during the events of A New Hope and Return of the Jedi. It's going to bounce back and forth throughout time, or bouncing, pretty much, at different eras of the original trilogy, different timestamps. The thing about this that I think may very well be the most risky of all is exactly the whole extension of Vader and Luke's duel being retold. Basically, the plan is to showcase what was hidden in that fight between Luke and Vader when it cuts away to the space battles. Alright, so that's the biggest problem of all, is that you gotta be very careful with that. You have to really make sure that those scenes in particular are gonna be handled very carefully. So on to the next thing here. We also know that additionally on top of all of this, alright, though of course the majority of this show will focus on many space battles and refilming and modernizing existing scenes, it will also involve side missions that will be explored, such as the Bothans obtaining the schematics of the Death Star 2, and even new revelations surrounding the aftermath of both Death Star explosions, and its impact on nearby planets and/or systems. The goal is to release this show sometime by 2026, and they want to begin writing by early 2024. Right now it's currently in the notes phase. So basically, Project Bluepoint is going to essentially be Rogue Squadron into a movie, or a show I should say. And it's going to be very movie-like, is what I meant to say. So basically, Tony Gilroy. What I like about Tony Gilroy, even though I was a little so-so on Andor, I liked some bits, but there were other parts of it that I found a little lackluster. That's just my take on Andor. Even though I believe cinematically it's the best thing as far as Star Wars TV shows go, and even some of the dialogue is probably the best stuff out there, I just feel that, you know, the show itself didn't really capture my interest as much as I'm anticipating for Ahsoka or Mandalorian Season 2. Now, given that Tony Gilroy is going to make this a very cinematic experience, very movie-like, this does have the opportunity to do something right. Now, retelling the events and remaking and refilming specific scenes of the original trilogy movies, I'm not 100% against it, but I still stand by my opinion that it's probably best to leave things like this at bay and not mess with anything that's not broken. And if they do mess this up, that could very well create a very big backlash. You have to be very careful with that. So I'm not saying that I have no trust in Tony, John, or Dave in this scenario, and given that George gave this the okay, I have a lot of faith in them. I have a lot of reassurance with that. So I don't believe that they're that clueless to where they would make a mistake so easily. Again, we're going to be getting a retelling of the Death Star trench run, a retelling of the Death Star 2 core, and stuff like that is going to be retold and modernized, featuring pilots, of course, like Luke, the return of Lando, all these different beloved characters, stuff like that. So Tony Gilroy, you know, really wants to hop into this particular series, Bluepoint, that's going to be focusing on different checkpoints throughout the galaxy, and space battles, and land battles as well. So overall, it's a very big deal, the fact that Disney is going through with this. You have to really walk on eggshells with this big time, I'm sure. You know, I would like to hear what you guys have to say about this, because this is something that could very well go wrong if they don't do things correctly. I think the thing that is going to be really interesting about this is that it's going to showcase the aftermath of both Death Star explosions, the circumstances of what happens afterwards. So anyways, guys, you know, fill me in below in the comments what you all have to say about this below. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.